Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, wonderful friends, and welcome back to our study of the book Liberation by the Spirit, André Lewis, through the mediumship of Chico Xavier. Today we have an extraordinary event, as the chapter is titled. Why? Because we get to see the transformative power of love. We get to see living examples of how to love our quote unquote enemies to the point that we are able to embrace them as they truly are, as our brothers and sisters in God. Carol, sunshine, is that possible? Yes, it is. And Mentor Gubio is coming here tonight to guide us and inspire us, to give us a living example of this beautiful process and to allow light to shine all the more and all more divinely. Here comes sunshine shining from coast to coast. Hi, sunshine.
Hello, dear Carol.
Thank you for shining through as you always do. Could you please guide us in an opening prayer, sunshine?
Yes, of course, dear Carol.
Thank you.
So I invite you to please close your eyes if you can. And let us drop into our bodies first, feeling our feet connected to Mother Earth. And as we take deep inhales, we're feeling our heartbeat in our chest. And we're saying, hello, dear heart. And let us open, dear heart, to connect with our Creator, with Jesus, and all the spirits on high. And as we're moving up, we're connecting with our thinking, with our thoughts, our mind. And our thoughts, our mind, are connecting with God as well. It is as if we had a giant mirror in front of us, connecting our hearts and minds with God, first cause of all things, the supreme intelligence, divine providence, the perfect and complete unconditional love, the mercy, the justice that is governing our universe so caringly and lovingly. We thank God, we thank Jesus, and the mentors of Kardec Radio of this group and our own mentors, the healing doctors and other spirits on high, and all the spirits who are attending this beautiful chapter, the lessons of this chapter today. We thank you all for being here, for guiding us, for inspiring us, for supporting us in our inner transformation towards love, towards being increasingly more of service. And by being of service, we're transforming not only our own hearts and minds, but also all those who we are touching. Loving always. Thank you. And with this, we begin our study session for today. And so be it.
So be it. Thank you, dear sunshine. We can feel the light irradiating from God down onto all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And speaking of light, would you mind shedding light onto this beautiful chapter for us, sunshine?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very exciting, another very exciting chapter. It's chapter 14. And as Carol already said, it's entitled An Extraordinary Event. And last week, we may remember that Gubbio was helping Georgie, and Georgie is Saldana's son. So it's a very loving act he did. And now they're back at Margarita's. And Margarita, we're reminding ourselves that Margarita is Gubbio's daughter of another incarnation. And Margarita is being tortured by spirits who, under the high priest of the dark world, Gregorio, is on her way of discarnation as a result. And so they're back at Margarita's home now, and they're observing two hypnotizers working on Margarita continuously. And at that very moment, Gubbio turns to Saldana, who is overlooking the torture of Margarita. And he says to him, "My dear friend, it is my turn to ask you to do something now." And he continues, "Saldana, please understand that this sick woman has been the daughter of my soul for ages. I feel the same love for her that you have had for Georgie. Don't I deserve sympathy and help too?" he asked Saldana. "We're brothers in our devotion to our children." And at that moment, Saldana, who is Margarita's persecutor, has thick tears appearing in his eyes, and they're bursting from this formerly cold and impassive eyes. So here is a hardcore, hard-hearted persecutor, Saldana. He's bursting into tears after those touching, humble words that Gubbio is uttering towards him. And Saldana seemed unable to respond due to the emotion that had overcome his throat. However, Gubbio embraced him fraternally. Here he is embracing the persecutor of his daughter. And Gubbio says, "Wouldn't you like to forgive those who hurt you and thus liberate the one who is so dear to my heart? There always comes a time," he says, "when we finally grow weary of our painful ways. There always comes a time." And he's speaking to us. "I too," now Gubbio is admitting something about his past. He says, "I too persecuted and humiliated others. I thought I was noble and invincible," Gubbio says, "whereas I was merely wretched and insensitive. I regarded those who didn't understand my perilous whims or praised my insanity as enemies. I loved to practice humiliating benevolence towards those beneath me. But life, which breaks down stone with drops of water," Gubbio says, "flooded my heart with a dagger of time, slowly transforming me so that the despot within me finally died. Now being called a brother is the only thing I am really proud of." And Gubbio and Saldana is crying at these words, listening to these words. And he says to Gubbio, "Nobody has ever spoken to me like this." And then he turns around and he says the impossible, which we didn't even expect. And he says, "Do with me what you will. Do with me what you will." And then he says to Saldana says to Gubbio, "Powerful spirit and good friend, you came to me as a servant." Gubbio, he's speaking to Gubbio. Gubbio came to him as a servant to awaken my energies frozen in the ice of revenge. I'm ready and willing to serve you. I'm yours from here on out. And then Gubbio so lovingly and beautifully corrects him, and he says, "We are Jesus's own forever."
Oh my goodness, this brings tears to my eyes.
Chills, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So the lesson, what we're hearing here is one thing. There's several. One thing is that time, the divine talisman, as Neo Lucio calls it, is a transformer. if we're not proactively, if we're not ready to do the changes of our heart, to open ourselves, connecting with God, having God as our guiding force, surrendering our will to God's will, time, like drip irrigation, will soften us little by little. It will break up our stone hard hearts eventually. And Gubio so humbly and beautifully admits to Saldana, please help me now. Would you please help me now? I was like you, I was like everyone else at some point, not very evolved. My heart was hard too. So time is on our side. Time is the transformer. Time is, we all have a little package of time that God gives us when we incarnate.
Yes.
We don't
Yeah.
know how big that package is. We don't know when we're discarnate. But that is our gift that God gives us to do the good with it. And our therapeutic question would be, right, Carol?
Right,
How
Sunshine.
are we using our time, right?
Yes, I can write it down for us.
Are we using it to be servants in the name of the good? Are we using it for our own inner transformation? And are we helping others in their transformation? Just like Rubio so beautifully modeled to us. The thing he says, he is only proud of the fact of being called a brother, a brother of humanity. And
Wow.
that is in itself, it's humility. Because
Yes.
Rubio is definitely more evolved, more head on that level before Saldana. And yet he sees himself as a child of God, as an equal. He does not think now he is superior to Saldana. He just wants to be a brother. And what does a brother do to his siblings? Loving them, being of service,
Yes.
helping them, being a good brother, a fraternal brother.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is he's modeling, he's showing to us, and Adaldana is actually recognizing it, that Gubbio, who is the more evolved spirit, humbles himself and serves the lower, the persecutor, killer of his daughter. He comes in humbly as a servant to the persecutor. That is a very powerful lesson for us. Can we be the servants of our persecutors? It's another
Wow. That's
therapeutic
a great
question.
question. I will write it down for us.
And what happened as a result of him humbling himself to serve his persecutor? Saldana is now ready to serve him. The most beautiful modeling without words. He's just modeling love. He's just like Jesus, showing us of how to do it correctly. And that is returning good for evil. It's
Yes.
exactly what Jesus taught us. And while Saldana then is saying, I'm yours from here on out, complete surrender, reminds us actually of Tarsus, right? Who said, Jesus, tell me what I need to do. Complete surrender of willpower to God.
Yes.
But even then, Saldana is so beautifully humble and says, we are Jesus's own forever. Because he's not taking the credit, even though he's completely like Jesus would always point towards the Father, towards God. He was pointing towards Jesus. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it such
So beautiful. So many lessons, Sunshine, for us to take to heart literally as remedies for our souls, that we too, like Mentor Gubbio, as you said, can start practicing to put love into action. Because like Mentor Gubbio, if we are humble to admit that we have millennia of training in reactivity, in wanting to be the best, in wanting to have the last word, in wanting to be the greatest, the most powerful. If we recognize that we have this ingrained habits in us, then we may have the courage to turn it around, as Mentor Gubbio just showed to us. First, we have to recognize the millennial roots of our reactivity and of our pride. And then we can choose, as did Mentor Gubbio, to practice humility. So, how can we bring this to our homes, to our lives, when we are interacting with the people that live in the same household that we do? When we feel that impulse of having the last word, of saying that but, of entering an argument, we can say, okay, breathe in and out, and we can say, I would like to live a Christ modeled life today. So instead of imposing myself, I choose to serve. Then we ask, what can we do to serve? So if somebody comes to us and says, Carol, you should have done better this morning. I asked you to do this, this, and that, and the other, and you haven't done it. So instead of my reacting and saying, oh, but you don't know what I've gone through, etc., I can just say, okay, we will take care of it right now. And in that way, we can put love into action and practice humility at the same time, as did Mentor Gubbio so beautifully. Right. Kardec Radio's team agrees this is a beautiful proposal. And yes, it was a great question from Sunshine and Mentor Gubbio. And another point that Mentor Gubbio brings to us that Sunshine also highlighted is, do we see ourselves as brothers and sisters in God? Because sometimes we get so attached to those roles that we incarnated in. For instance, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my dog, this is my cat, this is my plant, this is my house, this is my partner. And Mentor Gubbio is saying more than mine, 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 mine. These are spirits that were entrusted to us as concessions from God. And they are first and foremost our brothers and sisters, including the pets and the plants as well. So, are we able? Here's another exercise coming to us directly from Mentor Gubbio and highlighted by Sunshine so beautifully. Are we able to look at the people in our family constellation and recognize them as our brothers and sisters? And like Mentor Gubbio, are we able to look at the same family constellation and look not for where we can be served, but rather for how we can be of service to them? Because usually in our family circle, we have a list of expectations, right, friends?
Mhm.
If I am a mother, for instance, we may think as mothers, oh, I hope my children do this today because we agreed on it. I hope they meet my expectations with regards of X, Y, and Z. I hope my partner understands X, Y, and Z conditions. So we usually have our to-do lists for the others around us. But do we have a to-do list for ourselves? Do we stop to ask the people in our lives, how can I love you more? How can I be of more usefulness to you as a spirit? So there's a lot for us to learn from there. And the last highlight from Mentor Gubbio that spoke to our hearts is that he is showing millennial love for Margarita. He is saying that Margarita has been his daughter for centuries, perhaps. So we too, dear friends, have our spiritual family that, like Mentor Gubbio, is in the spiritual realm, loving us unconditionally. We may not always be able to see them, but they are there. So can we each stop to imagine how much love is being showered towards us right now? Right, sunshine?
Yes, it's beautiful, dear Carol. It is immense. I don't think we often grasp the
Mm-hmm.
totality and the immensity of it. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, it's always in two realms, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
also our persecutors, our brothers and sisters. They don't have to be persecute anyone. Also in the
Mm-hmm.
spirit realm, our obsessors. Same thing. How can we serve our obsessors?
Yes, exactly. Good point. So good that I'm gonna write it down because we don't want to forget.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, sunshine.
Yes. All right. Shall we continue?
Yes, please.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Yes. So, Gubbio and Saldana now agreed. Saldana will be helping Gubbio in rescuing his daughter, Margarita. This is really a turnaround that we're experiencing, and we're celebrating. We're celebrating. So then they observe that these two obsessors, however, are still heavy at work and working on Margarita. And one's name is Leoncio. Leoncio
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is Gaspar.
Mm-hmm.
Gaspar seems to be completely emotionless. He's just like a machine, magnetizing Margarita. So Gaspar right now is not the main person to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
clear still. But there's another one, Leoncio, and he's kind of like observing what's going on. He knows there's an energy shift. So he
Mm-hmm.
sees an opening. And Saldana approaches him, and that's very smart of him. And he says, Leoncio, there's a change now. Where there is a wizard of the divine light here. This is how he describes Gubbio. And Leoncio is wow. He says, well, if there is a wizard, maybe he can help me too. Familiar. So that's what you actually did, Carol, what you mentioned. Do we always want something or try
Yes.
to be of service? But, he's at the stage where he's like, wow, I need help too. And then he says, my wife is being seduced and my son is dying. That is his problem. But then he also says, well, I am a criminal. He
Mm-hmm.
admits right away, he's humble enough, Leon, to admit, he says, I'm a criminal, but I'm a father too.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, right? That's
Yes.
love. That's love always that gets us.
Yes.
Positive way, right?
Right.
It's predictable, but it's good predictable, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. And he says, if I could save my son from rebellious and death, I would be extremely grateful. And then he says, I too am begging for your immediate help. Wow. And so then, of course, Gubbio, who is an evolved spirit with a big heart and Christ consciousness, he says, what can we do for you? And then Leoncio summarizes his story, or he tells his story, but we're summarizing it. Actually, he discarnated about 7 years ago, left behind a wife, but with a very good bank account. So he was very successful financially during his life. His wife has a son, they both have a son by the name of Angelo. And when Leoncio observed, being discarnated, that his wife is now getting closer, starting a relationship with a male nurse, he experiences wounded pride. And it turned him into an inhuman collaborator. And as a result of that, Gregorio spotted him. We're remembering Gregorio is the head of the disgruntled spirits of this dark zone where spirits are congregating around wounded hearts. And it's usually lack of forgiveness. The root cause of it is lack of forgiveness. So he was spotted in his wounded pride and in his pain by Gregorio and became a worker for him. And it was all based on the fact that he took himself to be the sole possessor. I mean, that his wife belonged to him 100%, and nobody was allowed to share him. Well, this male nurse wasn't an angel either, because the little son got sick, and this male nurse saw an opportunity because his wife, his ex-wife from the previous incarnation, had a lot of money, and this guy had debt. So he started slowly poisoning this little child, Angelo. And why did he want to poison this little child? Well, because he saw him as a competitor for the money eventually, and he wanted all the money. So this couple was now on the brink of getting married. However, Angelo, the little kid, about to die. And that's why Leoncio wanted help, because he loves his child very much and he wants him to be killed. So he says, I'm asking you for a favor, Gubbio, and I know I don't deserve it. So he's humble. He's humble.
Yes.
He's showing humility. He says to Gubbio, I have done all I can to help my son Angelo, but I am an integral member of a phalange of evil spirits, and evil cannot save or help anyone. We need to pause.
Wow.
This is very powerful information.
Yes.
If we are leaning towards evil, or if we're evil, and evil, how is evil defined in the Spirit's book by the spirits on high? It's ignorance. No, we all have our share of ignorance, but as long as we're ignorant, we cannot help anyone. Of course, hopefully we're not ignorant in our totality. Nobody is. We all have, more enlightened pieces to us. But it helps us to remember how important it is to transcend our ignorance, to work on our inner transformation. Because without that, we cannot serve others. We cannot make a difference. We cannot help others. We may remember in chapter 1 of this book, it was Minister Flaccus who taught us some very important lessons about inner transformation and how to be of service, how to be best of service. He started off his speech in that chapter by saying that as a superior spirit, we cannot use the same methods that inferior spirits are using to trying to transform the other, helping the other. He says strictness is not necessarily the right tool. Strictness is something that is more for a teacher, falls into the realm of teaching. However, what works, or what does only work, is love. It's being of service. And we're reminded of what we just talked about, right, Carol?
Right, sunshine.
Through service, we're helping, through heartfelt service, we're helping transform our own lives. It's our own redemption, but also it helps others in their transformation, as we've seen. Flaccus also reminds us that education usually comes from the outside in, and there is a place for that when we learn new skills and we accumulate knowledge. But true, the perfecting kind of education needs to come from the inside out. That is the change of heart. That is how Gubbio, as a prime example in this book, goes around observing his daughter being killed over here and steps away from that. He does not go head on with anyone and helps everyone else in need. How beautiful. So that is the education from the inside out, because what happens to all these persecutors, their hearts get touched and they recognize the beautiful love that Gubbio is exemplifying. He further said that regeneration can not only happen through words, but it happens through assistance, again, the service. It is this love in action that you mentioned earlier. And we see it very clearly and most beautifully explained in the closest relationships we have, from parent to child in particular, but also from children to parents, to family, to the close family members, all our loved ones. We don't want to see in pain. And of course, who was the most amazing example of it all? Gubbio was pretty good, but
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was even better, right?
Yes, of
This
course.
did not only shine because of his sublime teachings, but he shone because he was the walking example of love in action. In this incessant service, no matter how others treated him, he did
Mm-hmm.
not go head on. He did
Mm-hmm.
not engage into dueling. He turned around and assisted others,
Mm-hmm.
helped others. And Flaccus tells us only love that is felt, only love that is felt, believed in, and lived by can
Mm-hmm.
bring about an ignition of love in our neighbors. It's the perfect redemptive plan. It's love
Mm-hmm.
in action. It's love
Mm-hmm.
that is felt, believed in, and lived by. It's the service to all. Right, Carol?
So beautiful, sunshine, and that makes us think of two uh, opportunities for reflection for us. Thank you, sunshine.
Yeah.
One is we could each, including ourselves, because we are in the same classroom for the same purpose, learning for immortality. Each of us could pick within the next 24 hours 3 actions that we could take to spread love in a more concrete manner. Could it be a phone call to a friend to whom we haven't spoken in a while that may be in need of a little word? Could it be an email that could encourage someone to believe that they are loved and appreciated by us? Could it be a little message of gratitude that we send to someone on our list of friends? Could it be a post on Facebook like Sunshine often does on her personal account and we see it and we love it? Could it be a post where we put one sentence, one of encouraging affirmation, and we share it on our network to spread little seeds of light to everyone around us? Could it be, as we talked about being of service to our ancestors, could it be saying a prayer to those that may be invisible to our eyes, but are definitely not invisible to our heart? So let us speak 3 ways, just 3 ways, in which all of us could put love into action. In that way, we can join Mentor Gubbio and all like minded spirits in their efforts to spread love. And it is, as Sunshine highlighted and as Mentor Gubbio exemplified, it is in forgetting about ourselves and our needs and in thinking and serving others that love comes to us. Because as we spread the perfume of love to someone else, it stays in our hands. So we will be perfumed as well. And this also reminds us of Chico Xavier. There is an account that a couple came to Chico Xavier once, and they had a daughter whom they loved that was suffering from extreme addictions, and they didn't know what to do. So Chico Xavier consulted Emmanuel, who was his spirit mentor, and Emmanuel said, "Please tell them to go do some charity work." And Chico Xavier relayed the message, and the couple said, "Oh my goodness, but how? What kind of charity?" And Chico just smiled. So 1 week later, someone called them and said, "Oh, would you like to help us in visiting people who are imprisoned at the moment?" And they said, "Sure." So they started going, and every week they went. In Brazil, in Minas Gerais, that time they could even bake cakes and take the cakes to those who were there. And after a few weeks, they noticed a dramatic positive improvement in their daughter's well being. So they went back to Chico to thank Chico for Chico's advice. Chico consulted Emmanuel, and he himself was puzzled with the almost miraculous transformation. So he asked Emmanuel, Emmanuel, what happened? The experimenter said, well, the mothers, the discarnate mothers of those who were imprisoned in that prison were so touched with the couple's gestures of heartfelt love, as Sunshine said, that they started working on behalf of their daughter to help her. And that's how come there was a quote unquote miraculous transformation. So we too, dear friends, we love the story of Chico Xavier, and we have shared it more than once because it's a message of hope to all of us, reminding us that we too can be miracle workers. Anytime that we put love into action on behalf of others, we too can help miracles to materialize. God is abundant love, and God is waiting for us to connect. So every time we connect, God shall provide, right, Sunshine?
Beautiful, Carol. So beautiful. Yes. Thank you so much for
Thank
bringing
you.
this to us. What a lovely story.
Yes,
Yes,
Chico
love and empathy.
Xavier is a beautiful living example for us.
Wow, yes, for sure.
Thank you. Could you please help us learn even more, Sunshine?
Yes, so let us see.
Thank you.
Yeah, so something surprising happens because Eloy was
Mhm,
part of the phalange of spirits. Rubio, Eloy, and Andre were
mhm,
traveling together through this whole experience, right? And
mhm,
as Eloy was observing this male nurse torturing this little child, Angelo. By the way, this male nurse's name is Felicio. He
mhm.
finds out that's my brother. Oh, wow. There's so many relationships, right?
So
And
many twists.
so many things.
Yes.
And Aloy is just aghast at seeing his brother being so evil. But again, Gubio is just like a pill of like a bomb of love and kindness. He says, Aloy, show me just one person who is not a brother or sister in need.
Oh, wow.
Praised the so-called persecutor label that we like to give to just a brother in need.
Mhm,
And that is an invitation for us too. Can we reframe our so-called enemies as brothers in need?
mhm,
It would help us so much more. It's like the first step to open our hearts and mellow out a little bit, right? And know
mhm,
we too, everyone, has been or is at times a brother or sister in need. And Aloy, as a result, is actually calming down a little bit. So they're going over to the house where the little boy is, where Angelo and Felicio are at work. And they're observing how he receives those toxins and he's slowly being killed. But the little boy is actually in touch with with his father, and he sees him and he starts communicating with him. And Aloy wants to jump to the rescue, and Gubi says, Aloy, step back a little bit. He says, don't interfere, Aloy. You're in no emotional condition to assist effectively. Aloy wants to help, he's got it, but she's not, he's too agitated. And that's
mhm.
another, he says, your anger would render you useless for this type of work. We'll need you later on. So this is another lesson for us is when we observe an injustice, maybe it's pertaining to our own selves or somebody else who is close or near to us, and we're having emotions that are, in the sense, angry, or agitated, or we feel very impassioned about something, and we still want to help. Gubi was giving us a very important lesson here, that we may need to step back first and clear out those emotions, out of our hearts, to be effective in our service to our persecutors, to those brothers and sisters in need, as Gubio calls them. So this is also a therapeutic question for us, to check in with ourselves, to not jump the gun, so to speak, to help if we're still polluted emotionally.
Right.
So Gubbio then began applying magnetic passes of awakening to Felicio. And so little by little, Felicio, who is the persecutor of the little boy, Angelo, is coming to it and is saying, what is this? What's this? That monster's actually shedding some tears because he's observing Eloy crying. Leoncio crying. He's observing Leoncio crying, who is the father of Angelo and the former husband of the lady that the nurse, namely Felicia, wants to marry. And so they're not in a good relationship, right? He says, what? He's crying? How can that be? And then Gubbio is helping him understand. He says, didn't your instinct for pleasure and power lead you to invade this sanctuary? What about your regrettable actions as a nurse? So he's bringing light into Felicio's mind. Felicio, compared with the eternity in which consciousness moves, the human experience is a mere dream or nightmare, only a few minutes long. That is what Gubbio is telling Felicio, and he's telling us too, that our human experience is just a dream or a nightmare. That depends on us, because we have free will. We co-create our life experience, and it's only a few minutes long. We're like a drone flying over our eternity right
Right, Sunshine.
Why are you compromising your future, he's asking him, at the cost of the illusory comfort of only a few days, meaning life is only a few days? Those who sow thorns, he says, will reap thorns in their own soul and will appear before the Lord with hands changed into abominable claws. Those who scatter stones around the feet of others will be overcome by the hardness and paralysis of their own heart. So essentially, Gubbio is helping us and Felicio understand and remind us and him of the law of cause and effect once again. We are co-creators with God. We're creating our own reality. We're putting seeds into our garden of eternity every second, essentially with every thought we are thinking. It is in Memoirs of a Suicide where we learn so beautifully that the harmony and beauty of the universe, of God's creation, can never be messed with. We cannot move up against. We cannot try to destroy it. Because at that very moment, there will be an effect. And we will be the ones, we will be the criminals who are creating our own sentence, our own effect, our own consequence by trying to work against God's laws, God's love, God's justice, God's harmony and beauty. So here, Felicio is invited to see life in the bigger picture as an eternal path, where this moment, and this is our own reminder, this lifetime, we may be suffering. We may feel we're not getting what we want or need even. We're wondering, why are we here at this time, difficult time on planet Earth? It is it's just a few days in the bigger picture of all of our lives. And we're here for a purpose. And the purpose is to transform towards love, to surrender our will to God's will, which is always love, it's always compassion, service, light, harmony, and beauty.
Right, Sunshine. Beautiful reminder that we are sustained by God's love at all times. So, question for us: have we been acting as conscious instruments of God's love. As Mentor Gubbio is doing, it's useful to stop to think, to use our reasoning, our discernment before we act. Because if we do not activate our prefrontal cortex, which is where our decision making apparatus is neurologically, we will just be reacting. We will be closer to our animal instincts of preservation than to our human status, so to speak. Jesus, as Sunshine pointed out so beautifully, is our master, the governor of this planet, and our guide and model because he was and is able to use the light of his discernment constantly. And he was able, through his discernment, to reason how to channel love. This is why he is a perfect instrument of God's will. Then we may be asking ourselves, Sunshine, Carol, how can we get there? We can get there by taking little steps, by breathing in and out to get out of the reactive mode and thinking, how can I be a conscious instrument of divine love at this moment? Because if we activate our prefrontal cortex and our discernment, then we will not be reactive. If we are not reactive, then we are more likely to plant seeds of love in the eternal garden of our lives. And then what are we going to reap? Flowers of love. So if we are facing difficult circumstances at this moment, the way in which we respond to the circumstances will add seeds is likely to add seeds of love or seeds of old habits into the garden of our lives. We are incarnated. God performed beautiful plastic surgery on us. We have a new body, a new identity, a new set of circumstances, a new everything. Right? God is the most amazing plastic surgeon in the universe. We don't even remember what we were like before. So God gives us a brand new beginning. Why? Exactly for this. So that we are lighter and equipped to plant seeds of love in our garden of eternity. Sunshine said, but we are invited at the human level to use the light of discernment. Why are the quote unquote obsessors acting like a machine, as Sunshine pointed out, because they are traumatized in that reactivity mode. They are stuck in that reactivity mode. The minute Mentor Gubbio comes in and sheds the light of reasoning before them, they are able to break free of that mental conditioning. So let us practice breaking free of our own mental conditioning. So by asking ourselves, how may I be? How may we be instruments of love in each of the little situations, daily situations that we encounter? Even if they are routine situations, we can still ask, how may we be instruments of love in our lives? And Rihanna is saying, right, Rihanna, we need to be mindful of our feelings and use the Spirit's teachings as as the focus of our lives. Beautifully said, Rihanna. This is why we need the light of discernment, as it's written in the Gospel according to Spiritism, in the section about faith. We believe in God because we know. We believe in the counsel of the spirits because we know, we understand. So yes, let us use our discernment for the good.
Yes.
Right, Rihanna? Right, Sunshine?
Yes. Thank you, Rihanna. Thank you, dear Carol. Yes.
Thank you, Sunshine. And I know you have one more beautiful highlight for us, right, Sunshine?
Yes, yes. So in this process, our hearts, our icy hearts are melting, which is so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. We need
Yes.
it. And actually, it's talking about hearts. Gubio is asking Felicia, have you lost your ability to love? Good question.
Wow. Good question.
To what degree have we lost it? But then he responds and says, yeah, but what about the money? You know, he's after the money.
Mm-hmm.
He left it, you know, this girl, this lady has it. How am I going to pay off all those debts until I marry Avelina? Avelina used to be his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And you think you can, and then Gubio says, and you think you can solve your money problems by piling up more debts? Wow, good question. Sometimes we create more debts that are not exactly financial debts, but by hustling after money in an illegitimate way, we
Mm-hmm.
may create more debts for ourselves. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, yeah. So each man's and each woman's actions structure their destinies. Again, law of cause and effect, Gubio is reminding us. We are responsible for all our decisions. In light of the designs of the eternal, Rubio is lecturing him and us. He said, and yet everyone has free will. Nobody is holding you back from marrying her, but he's giving him new thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says to him, wealth, and he's telling us to, wealth is a crown that is too heavy for the head of the one who cannot handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And through exhaustion and disillusionment, it usually ruins all those who would have it without the broad horizons work of charity. With time, you will learn that happiness is not measured by the coffers that rust will consume someday. And he completes that conversation by saying, squander the precious reserves of this home if you can't grasp the sacred purpose of money. Soar to the heights of transitory societal life. Decorate yourself with the conventional titles that the lower world is accustomed to. So we want to pause. There is some food for thought in us. It's around our attachments to the transitory values that society puts on money, wealth, and more wealth and power. How much are we running after those items,
Mm-hmm.
power and money? Are we creating more debt in our pursuit for power and money? That is the question that essentially Gubbio is asking Felicio, but also asking us. Is our crown of money, of wealth, too heavy for our necks, for us to carry?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, are we accumulating and piling up? And are we using the money for its sacred purpose, which is sharing, doing the good? Emmanuel wrote this beautiful little book, Money, which is chock full of lessons for us about how to handle money in a respectful, diligent, loving, caring, in a divine, in a sacred way. Money per se, there's nothing wrong with it. It's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But it is the value we attach to it, what we do with it, that either creates debt for us or helps us to undo previous debts that we have accumulated. Money is not something to be selfishly held on to, because why? It's a gift from God.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's a gift from God, we are invited, as Emmanuel teaches us in Thought and Life in the chapter, in one of his chapters, Assistance, in the chapter of assistance, that if we hold on to money or any gift we've received from God, we will create stagnation in our minds, our perispirit, and our physical form, and eventually it will get us sick. Because if we dam up water, the water tends to get much more quickly contaminated.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing as if we let it run its course, and then it can serve many communities downriver. That is the invitation for us to share, to do the good with our money, to not hoard it and not to overemphasize it, to attach ourselves too much to it. And if we do, we will also create a harder discarnation moment for us. So our invitation is to dematerialize our lives, but emphasizing our connection with God and doing the good, to be of service. Right, Carol?
Right, Sunshine. We will post here on the comments the study that Dr. Vanessa Anceloni did right here on Kardec Radio on this very book by Emmanuel entitled Money. She kindly discussed every chapter with us, and we will post the playlist on the comments so
Yes.
that we can all boost our understanding of the divine tool that money is when it is used for divine purposes, for the purpose of putting love into action, right, Sunshine?
Yes, yes. Beautiful, Carol.
Yes. So, shall we do our final prayer, Sunshine?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So, dear friends, let us now, in gratitude to the much that we have received, to the blessing of this reincarnation, to the gift of life eternal, let us gather together in spirit and in heart to thank God for His, her abundant love, for the love that sustains us, for the love in which we are truly immersed, for the love that makes every heart on the earth and beyond beat harmoniously, for the love that allows every planet in the universe to sustain itself in great beauty, for the silence that showcases in nature how harmonious every living creature is within its diversity, for the opportunity that God grants for us to be enrolled in the school of life on the earth, for the blessing that it is for us to be reincarnated exactly at this time and been given daily opportunities to develop God-centered virtue. We would like to pray in gratitude for Andre Lewis, Chico Xavier, Mentor Gubbio, for them teaching us how to do the good with living examples in the name of Christ Jesus of the earth. Thank you for showing us that yes, it is indeed possible for each of us to put love into action in our realms of action if we choose to connect to God's love. May we pray together so that each of us become a better instrument of God's love on the earth. Let us visualize our Master Jesus' heart showering the whole planet with a golden light of healing and compassion. Let us pray equally for our brothers and sisters like Saldanha, Leôncio, and Felício, so that all of us wake up from our own ignorance and make a resolute decision to serve God by doing the good on behalf of others. We pray so that we have the courage to use of our vitality and all of our resources to learn the good, to think the good, to feel the good, to speak the good, to visualize the good, to act on behalf of the good, and to mold the good with all the resources given to us by God. And we pray, oh dear God, that we consciously bring you closer to our hearts so that you become the center of our lives. No longer do we want to live a self centered life. We pray so that you heal us from our own selfish impulses, and like Saldanha and Leôncio, that we too have the courage to love more, to serve more, to be grateful to you all the more, and to be consciously connected to you on a daily basis. May you, dear God, mold the soils of our heart, taking away the seeds and weeds of pride and selfishness, so that we may become reflections of you, however small, wherever we are. Thank you for allowing us to be your children and co creators with you. We love you, God, and we ask for your loving permission to end our study of today, and so be it.
And so be it, dear Carol. Thank you so much for this
Thank
lesson.
you. Thank you, sunshine, for shining through as you always do. And we can't wait to come back next week for more Love into Action when we discuss chapter 15 entitled Help at Last. When we think that we can't even imagine how love shall spread all the more, wait until next week and we'll see, dear friends, love continues to spread itself because God is love and all we need is God. Right, sunshine?
Yes, beautiful. So,
Thank
God
you.
willing, we will see you again next week, same time, same place. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
Bless you.
sunshine. Thank you, friends. Big hug.
Bye.
Kiss. And we'll
Yeah.
see you next time.
Mhm.